In the modern age, where the world is saturated with noise, opinions, and an ever-increasing pressure to constantly express oneself, whether through social media, public debates, or everyday conversations, the value of silence has diminished significantly. Yet, ironically, it is in this very chaos that silence becomes most powerful. Choosing to stay silent, especially when everyone else is eager to speak, is often misunderstood as weakness, passivity, or lack of opinion. However, silence is not the absence of thought, intelligence, or courage. Rather, it is a conscious, strategic act that reflects depth, self-control, and wisdom. In fact, knowing when to stay silent is one of the most underrated but vital life skills a person can possess. It is easy to speak. What is difficult is knowing what to say, when to say it, and when saying nothing at all serves a greater purpose. Silence offers a mental pause, a space to reflect, a moment to choose intention over impulse. It is in this quiet space that clarity begins to emerge. Often, when emotions are running high or when situations are uncertain, reacting too quickly with words can lead to misunderstandings, unnecessary conflict, or regrets. Words, once spoken, cannot be taken back, and in many cases, people speak not from a place of reason, but from a place of emotional turbulence. Silence, on the other hand, acts as a filter between your thoughts and your voice. It allows your mind to settle and your emotions to level out before you express yourself. By staying silent in emotionally charged moments, you protect not only your relationships with others, but also your own dignity. There's great strength in the decision to hold back words until they are truly worth sharing. More than just a form of restraint, silence can be a form of power, a deliberate refusal to participate in chaos, conflict, or meaningless chatter. In some situations, saying less or nothing at all forces others to consider your presence more carefully. People often expect immediate reactions or replies, but silence disrupts that pattern and can shift the dynamics of a conversation. It can make others question their own words, rethink their assumptions, or even reveal their true intentions. Remaining silent doesn't mean you agree. It means you are observing, analyzing, and choosing your moment wisely. There is a subtle authority that comes from knowing you don't have to fill every silence with sound, every moment with opinion. Moreover, silence allows for a deeper understanding of both oneself and the world. When we are silent, we give ourselves permission to listen, not just to other people, but to our own inner thoughts and feelings. In a world where people are constantly encouraged to be loud, to make their presence known, to fight to be heard, there is something radically powerful about choosing instead to be quiet and to listen. Listening, in its true form, is not simply hearing words, but understanding the meaning behind them, and this kind of listening can only occur when one is truly silent, mentally, emotionally, and verbally. People who master silence are often those who understand the value of perspective. They don't rush to conclusions, don't interrupt others, and don't feel the need to prove themselves in every conversation. Instead, they absorb information, assess the situation, and respond only when necessary. This gives their words more weight when they do choose to speak. People tend to listen more attentively to those who speak rarely but wisely. Silence enhances credibility because it signals that the speaker is deliberate and thoughtful, not impulsive or attention-seeking. In essence, staying silent doesn't mean suppressing your voice, it means elevating its value. The noise of the world will never stop. There will always be someone talking, judging, speculating, or pushing their opinions forward. But in that sea of noise, silence stands out. It draws people in, it makes space for thought, and it protects you from becoming entangled in unnecessary drama or emotional turbulence. Silence is a choice that often requires far more discipline and confidence than speaking out. It's easy to talk to fill the void, to defend yourself instantly, or to share your every thought online. It's far harder to pause, to choose not to respond, and to wait until your words are meaningful. Staying silent teaches you patience. It teaches you to respect your own peace and to avoid wasting energy on arguments or situations that don't deserve your time. It teaches you that not everything needs a reaction, and not every situation benefits from your involvement. In doing so, silence becomes not just a habit, but a lifestyle, one that protects your energy, sharpens your awareness, and gradually transforms you into someone who operates from a place of strength rather than reaction. And in a world constantly demanding your attention and your voice, choosing silence becomes a revolutionary act of self-mastery. One of the most important reasons to stay silent, particularly in emotionally charged situations, is to avoid saying something that may later be deeply regretted. Human emotions, especially when sparked by anger, jealousy, or frustration, often push people to speak impulsively. In such moments, words are rarely measured. They are thrown out as weapons, not tools of communication. Harsh words, once released, can damage relationships, break trust, and create emotional scars that take years to heal if they ever do. In contrast, silence provides a moment of stillness between stimulus and response. It is in this space that rational thought can return and emotions can settle. A person who chooses silence in the face of provocation is not suppressing their feelings, but rather mastering them. They are choosing to protect their dignity, preserve the relationship if it's worth preserving, and avoid escalating the conflict. This doesn't mean walking away from every confrontation, but rather knowing the value of responding at the right time with the right words, or sometimes none at all. Silence in such scenarios isn't avoidance, it is wisdom in action. It allows you to assess whether a response is even necessary, and if so, what kind of response is appropriate. More often than not, when you step back and observe a situation in silence, you gain a clearer understanding of what is really happening beneath the surface. Was the other person lashing out because of something unrelated to you? Was it a moment of stress or insecurity on their part? These insights only become clear when you're not reacting, when you're quiet, calm, and observant. Staying silent in moments of conflict protects not just your external relationships, but your internal peace. It allows you to remain grounded while others lose their balance, and ultimately, it gives you control over the one thing you can truly master, yourself. Silence is not only a tool for emotional regulation, but also a powerful mechanism for deep listening and learning. In today's hyper-verbal culture, people often confuse talking with intelligence and noise with productivity. But true wisdom rarely announces itself loudly. The people who understand the most often say the least, not because they have nothing to contribute, but because they are too busy observing, analyzing, and absorbing the world around them. Remaining silent allows you to hear more than just words. It allows you to tune into the tone, intent, and emotions behind what is being said. When you are silent, you are not simply waiting for your turn to speak. You are actively listening. This level of listening brings clarity not only about others but about yourself. You begin to understand patterns in human behavior, motives behind actions, and even your own emotional responses to certain triggers. This insight is impossible to gain when your mind is preoccupied with forming rebuttals, proving a point, or competing for attention. By choosing to stay silent, you allow others the room to reveal themselves more fully. People tend to speak more freely in the presence of a good listener. In fact, many people are so unaccustomed to being truly heard that when someone listens in silence, they instinctively open up more. This creates opportunities to learn, not just about individuals, but about life, values, and the complexities of the human experience. Moreover, silence nurtures humility, a quality often overlooked in environments that reward assertiveness and self-promotion. The silent observer understands that there is always something more to learn, even from people who seem less experienced or intelligent. They are not driven by the need to dominate every discussion or prove their superiority. Instead, they are content to listen and reflect, knowing that knowledge is not something you shout into a room. It's something you gather quietly over time. In this sense, silence is a gateway to wisdom. It helps you see nuance, acknowledge ambiguity, and develop a more mature understanding of life. It helps you detach from ego, which is often the driving force behind unnecessary talking. People frequently speak just to feel important or to gain attention. But the truly wise know that attention earned through silence and thoughtful presence is far more powerful than attention gained through noise. Silence is often uncomfortable for people, which is why they rush to fill it. But comfort with silence signals confidence. It means you are at ease with yourself and do not rely on external validation to feel significant. This quiet confidence is magnetic. It draws people toward you because it is rare and grounded. In professional settings, silence is an underrated strategy that can lead to better decision making, stronger leadership, and more effective communication. In meetings, for example, the person who listens carefully, absorbs information, and then speaks with precision and relevance often makes the most lasting impression. Their words carry more weight because they are not frequent, they are intentional. Similarly, during negotiations or difficult conversations, silence can be used to your advantage. When you pause instead of responding immediately, it can create a sense of psychological space that makes the other person reveal more than they intended. Silence, used deliberately, can shift the power dynamics in a conversation. It can unsettle a manipulator, slow down a heated exchange, or even de-escalate potential conflict. It is a subtle but potent form of communication. Silence can say, "I'm not impressed," "I'm not interested," or "I'm thinking," without ever speaking a word. It allows others to project their assumptions onto you, which can often reveal more about them than you could ever uncover through direct questioning. Additionally, in group dynamics, silent individuals are often seen as more mysterious or thoughtful. People are naturally curious about those who don't overshare. This mystery can be a form of quiet influence. People begin to pay more attention to what you say because you don't speak often. In contrast, those who talk constantly may be tuned out or dismissed as noise, even if they occasionally have valuable insights. By remaining silent until you have something truly meaningful to contribute, you train others to associate your voice with value. You become the kind of person whose opinions are respected, not because you force them into conversations, but because your silence has already established credibility. Furthermore, silence fosters mindfulness. In a world that constantly demands your reaction through pings, notifications, emails, and social media update, choosing silence is a form of reclaiming your attention. It allows you to become more aware of your surroundings, your thoughts, and your inner state. When you practice silence regularly, even for short periods of time, you begin to notice things you previously ignored: the rhythm of your breath, the tension in your shoulders, the subtle beauty in everyday moments. Silence reconnects you with the present moment and creates a space where creativity, intuition, and insight can arise. Some of the greatest ideas and realizations come not from discussion, but from quiet reflection. The most profound thinkers in history, philosophers, scientists, artists, and spiritual leaders, often emphasize the importance of solitude and silence in their creative and intellectual processes. It is in this sacred silence that we return to ourselves, not as performers or participants in a noisy world, but as observers of something deeper and more enduring. In leadership and professional environments, silence becomes an even more strategic and influential tool. A common misconception is that leaders must always be the loudest voice in the room, issuing directives, making bold proclamations, and asserting control through constant communication. However, truly effective leaders understand that power does not come from dominating conversation. It comes from intentionality, presence, and the ability to listen deeply. Staying silent in meetings or discussions doesn't imply a lack of ideas or authority. Rather, it demonstrates thoughtfulness, confidence, and the willingness to let others speak first. This gives the leader a more comprehensive understanding of the team's perspectives, challenges, and thought processes. It also fosters a culture where everyone feels heard and valued, not overshadowed. When a leader does eventually speak, their words carry more gravity precisely because they have not spoken unnecessarily. This ability to speak less but say more enhances credibility, trust, and respect among peers and subordinates. Silence gives room for insight to rise and helps leaders avoid rash decisions based on partial information or unchecked emotions. In negotiations, silence can be a critical tactic. Many people are uncomfortable with silence during tense moments, so they rush to fill the space by revealing too much or making premature concessions. A negotiator who uses silence wisely can apply psychological pressure, prompting the other party to speak more openly or reconsider their position. A well-timed pause after an offer or statement can make the other side question their stance or reveal uncertainties they were trying to hide. In this way, silence becomes more than a lack of speech, it becomes a form of influence. You are saying, without speaking, that you are not desperate, not reactive, and not easily moved by pressure. This kind of quiet strength often leads to better outcomes because it forces people to engage with your presence, rather than with your words alone. It also signals confidence and patience, two qualities that are invaluable in any form of leadership or high-stakes communication. Moreover, silence is a tool for managing perception. In a world where people are quick to judge based on what they hear, controlling what you say, and more importantly, what you don't say, and protect your personal brand and reputation. Speaking too frequently, too openly, or too emotionally can make you appear unprofessional or immature, especially in environments where discretion is valued. On the other hand, people who are more selective with their words tend to be seen as more composed, thoughtful, and reliable. Their silence is interpreted not as absence, but as maturity. This is especially important in situations where emotions are high and words could easily be weaponized against you. In such moments, remaining silent until you've fully processed your thoughts can prevent misunderstandings and missteps that could damage your image or career. The ability to control your speech is directly connected to the ability to control your narrative. It is also worth considering how silence plays a role in conflict resolution and crisis management. During times of stress or public scrutiny, leaders and individuals are often pressured to respond quickly, provide answers, or make statements. However, silence can be a strategic pause that prevents escalation. Rather than issuing a rushed comment that may later be retracted or criticized, staying silent allows time to gather facts, consult others, and choose a response that is measured and appropriate. This pause is not a delay, it is preparation. It signals that you are taking the situation seriously enough to think before speaking. In highly sensitive or emotional situations, this kind of silence earns respect rather than suspicion. People are tired of knee-jerk reactions and appreciate those who take the time to reflect before engaging. When silence is used with integrity and transparency, it can build credibility even in the midst of chaos. Beyond the workplace and leadership, silence also protects one's energy and mental focus. Speaking often requires energy, mental, emotional, and physical. When you're constantly talking, explaining, defending, or debating, you're giving away parts of yourself that could be preserved for more meaningful interactions. Silence is a way to protect your inner world from being drained by the noise of the outer world. It acts as a boundary between your peace and the chaos of others. By choosing when and where to speak, you're essentially deciding how and with whom to spend your energy. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every accusation requires a defense, and not every conversation needs your participation. Sometimes, silence is the only way to preserve your power and your sanity in a world that demands your constant availability. People who live with intention understand this. They know that silence is not emptiness, but presence. It is the space in which strength is gathered, thoughts are clarified, and identity is reclaimed. Ultimately, choosing silence is not about withdrawing from the world or becoming invisible. It is about becoming more intentional with how you engage with it in every aspect of life. Personal, professional, emotional, and intellectual, silence offers a kind of power that noise can never match. It is the power of self-awareness, of discipline, and of inner control. When you stay silent, you are making a conscious decision not to be ruled by impulse, not to be dragged into every argument, not to respond to every criticism, and not to validate every opinion with your attention. You are in effect reclaiming your agency. So many people today live on edge, reacting constantly to the chaos around them, jumping into conflicts, responding to every message, every insult, every comment, as if silence would mean defeat. But in truth, silence often means victory. Victory over the ego, over the need for validation, and over the toxic pull of drama that thrives on engagement. It is a victory that is quiet, yes, but unmistakably powerful. In interpersonal relationships, silence can also serve as a mirror. When you stay silent during an argument or when someone mistreats you, it often causes the other person to reflect on their own behavior. If your silence is grounded in calm strength, not passive aggression, it sends a clear message that you are not willing to stoop to a lower level of communication. It challenges people to think more deeply about how they are acting and what they are saying. In this way, silence becomes a tool for emotional intelligence, guiding not only your own reactions but influencing the emotional tone of the entire relationship. It creates a space for mutual growth, where words are not used to wound but to understand. Furthermore, in situations where someone expects you to beg, to explain, or to defend yourself unnecessarily, your silence can communicate dignity and self-respect. You are showing that your worth is not up for debate. You are not interested in performing for anyone's approval or begging for understanding. That kind of quiet self-assurance often speaks volumes more than any eloquent argument ever could. In the digital world where opinions are constantly shared, debates rage endlessly, and personal lives are broadcast without filter, silence has become almost counter-cultural. People feel pressured to respond to everything, to make their views known on every issue, to comment, to explain, to justify. But you don't owe the world your constant commentary. You don't have to show up to every argument you're invited to. Silence in the digital space is a powerful form of boundary setting. It says, I am not obligated to perform. It allows you to preserve your privacy, your sanity, and your mental clarity. Every time you choose not to engage with something toxic online, every time you choose not to share a private moment just for validation, you are protecting your peace. You are choosing depth over display. And in doing so, you are also teaching others that it is okay to be private, to be thoughtful, to be discerning with your words and your presence. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every silence needs to be filled. On a deeper level, silence also connects us with ourselves. In solitude, when the distractions fall away, silence allows us to meet the parts of ourselves that are often drowned out by noise: our intuition, our fears, our unspoken desires, and our true voice. It is in silence that healing begins. Meditation, reflection, prayer, and journaling. These practices are rooted in silence. They require stillness and honesty. And while silence can be uncomfortable at first, especially for those who have always relied on external input to define their lives, it eventually becomes a place of strength and clarity. The ability to sit with yourself in silence is one of the most underrated forms of emotional resilience. It means you don't fear your own mind. It means you are willing to understand yourself before demanding that others understand you. In a world constantly telling you who to be, what to want, and how to live, silence allows you to hear your own voice again. It brings you back to your center. In conclusion, staying silent is not about being passive, weak, or invisible. It is about being wise, intentional, and in control. It is about choosing your moments, protecting your energy, and allowing space for truth, yours and others, to emerge without distortion. Silence helps us avoid unnecessary conflict, promotes deeper listening, strengthens relationships, and cultivates inner peace. It empowers us in leadership, sharpens our perception, and connects us with our authentic selves. In a world obsessed with speaking, sharing, reacting, and performing, silence is a bold and radical act of self-possession. It is a choice to engage on your terms, to think before responding, and to value substance over noise. So the next time you are tempted to speak out of anger, to explain yourself when it isn't necessary, or to defend your worth to someone who has already made up their mind, choose silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because what you carry within is far too powerful to be wasted on the unworthy. And that is exactly why you must stay silent.